So I'm going to be talking about polarized ethnic identity and how it's impacted communal conflict in India. So my research question goes back a step, takes a step back in a way to look at how polarized political dialogue and rhetoric has played a role in the escalation and ethnic and communal conflict in India. For this, I look at the specific conflict of CAA and NRC in Assam. I know all of this sounds like gibberish, but stay with me. What is the CAA? In 2019, the Indian Parliament passed a bill which said that all non-Muslim minorities from Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Bangladesh will now get a fast track process for citizenship as long as they enter the country prior to 2015. Now, this is a change from the previous rules because earlier the rule said that anybody who entered the country prior to 1973 would be naturalized and everybody else would be treated as an illegal immigrant unless they came through legal channels. Now, this led to widespread protests all over the country, riots in certain key states, including our case study in Assam. And this is a problem because Assam has a history of polarized ethnicity, where the Assamese people are extremely sensitive about those who come from other states within the country, not leave alone those who come from Bangladesh. So this led to protests which took a very different color. In the rest of India, people are saying, we don't want Muslims to be discriminated. In Assam, people are saying, I don't want anybody here, Muslim, Hindu, get out. So, which is why this is a very interesting conflict. Data analysis reveals something very interesting about this conflict in the sense that prior to 2014, political rhetoric existed which led to polarizing of ethnicity. But it reached a new level when BJP came to power. Now, I don't think this is because of the BJP itself. I think this is because of the fact that the opposition lost miserably, that they did not hold any seats in the parliament, and that led to frustration. There was fear-mongering, misrepresentation of information, disinformation, blocking, posturing, all sorts of tactics that were employed by both sides when this particular bill was announced. One side said, we will kick out all the invaders, that is Muslims. And the other side said that all Muslims are going to be put to death, they will die in concentration camps, this is Nuremberg, which obviously did not suit well with the Hindus, who were the majority, and felt that they cannot be compared to Nazis. So I know this is not very clear, but the one with the slope there basically looks at the dynamics of trust between the ruling government and the Hindu community, which is basically their primary voter base, which fell drastically and hasn't really recovered since 2019. And this is because of the rhetoric that was used. On the other side, we look at the Muslim community in India, and we see that they have a complete combination of different needs that haven't been met. Especially in Assam, where all these people, millions of them, receive very little funding from the government, and at the same time also face fears of persecution not only from their fellow citizens, but also from the government. So they have physiological needs that are not met, safety needs that are not met. I think these overwhelm whatever happens on the towards the upper levels. So for literature review, I looked at these three different themes. I'm not going to go into detail, but one particular method that I really, particular theory and methodology that I really found very helpful was CMM, coordinated management of meaning, because it helped me understand how political parties were communicating with each other, how it was being perceived by the people, and what were the resulting actions. So for this, I looked at interviews, newspaper clippings, recordings of political speeches, student organization speeches, and I was able to understand what was said and how people reacted to that, usually ending in riots. So what are the needs? One, leaders need to be included in decision making and governance to the extent possible. Two, socio-economic needs of the communities need to be addressed. Three, the Muslim community needs to be protected from persecution and discrimination. So for this, there are three interventions that I looked at. One is a high-level negotiation where you bring everyone together and get them to cooperate for the next few interventions at least, in the sense that you're giving them that validation which addresses their need for, which basically addresses addresses why they escalate conflict, and at the same time giving them a place at the table. The next one is the modified 21st century town meeting, which is modeled after the Panchayat development plan, which I think is very interesting because it's been present in India for centuries and would allow for community-led and community-based development programs. Finally, a policy proposal to address the security needs, which would help people who are applying for citizenship to get access to community support as well as government support so that they don't end up in detention centers where they're treated poorly. So network analysis. Network analysis, this is my network, and it is very complicated because I have divided each community into subgroups. Each community has intersections in their identity. You can, for Hindus, let's take for example, you have upper caste. In upper caste, you have Brahmins. In Brahmins, you have 4 different types of Brahmins. And then in those Brahmins, you have poor Brahmins and you have rich Brahmins. Now let's go down to lower caste, the Dalits. You have different types of Dalits. You have Dalits who have converted to Christianity. So there's a lot of intersectionality which impacts the way they interact with each other. The point here is when there is peace, they are like this. But when there is conflict, they completely isolate themselves to within their subgroup. And the government completely controls all the interaction that the people have with, So the government completely controls all the interaction the people have with the central administration, who are key conduits of information, of resources to the vulnerable communities. So what I realized is, one, centrality and hierarchy impedes the way information and resources are passed along the system, which means that the central government and the state government the central and state administration finds themselves helpless when there's conflict or when there's escalation because they cannot reach out to people, neither can they pass out information or give protection until it's too late. Next, there is homophily in the communities itself, which goes a level deeper when it comes to subgroups. But the only thing that breaks through is when people are rich, or when they have they're doctors, they're engineers, or they're working in union, they belong to the same trade union. There you might find some more inter-community interaction, which has in the past proven to be really useful in overcoming conflict or preventing violence, especially in Gujarat. The next is social capital is concentrated at the top in the sense that the rich, the more influential community leaders hold all the social capital. Regular people don't have that much. So what exactly what are the sustainability challenges? One, governments are fickle. They don't stay for long. They won't support projects for long. I'll give an example. There was a project called Amravati project in Telangana, a state in India. The government spent $2 billion on developing a city. And then it was abandoned because the government changed. They've recently picked it up, but it's a delay which means that they would require another $4 billion to develop this city. So that's a problem. Having sustained political buy-in is extremely important for anything to happen. Next, homophily. These communities tend to isolate themselves when in conflict, and therefore there needs to be more network weaving to address this particular issue. The third issue is the power that the governments exert on the administration, which basically stops them from doing their duty. So what exactly can be done? One, making the community self-reliant in the sense that having them control how they interact with each other. Again, network weaving is a great option. If you see this map, I've identified a broker who's a non-state, non-political actor. Non-state, non-political actor who can act as a broker but also help in network weaving. Finally, public-private partnerships. You don't need the government to do everything. You bring in corporations, let's say like Tata, who have taken up CSR really actively and have developed villages. Monitoring and evaluation, I look at results-based management, performance indicators, and participatory methods. And a combination of this is required because each intervention is unique in its own way. Some of them would require performance indicators. For example, if you're trying to measure socio-economic development, you need performance indicators like how has employment changed, how has housing situation changed. But you need participatory methods when you're looking at whether the community is satisfied with what's happening. And yeah, so it's a combination. I also think that everybody who is in conflict needs to be in the decision room so that there is everybody's involved. Thank you. I'm sorry, I went over time.
All right, thank you, Lakshmi. Amy or Mark, any questions from online?
Yes, Peter, thank you. This is Mark. Lakshmi, I have a question. First of all, you're obviously an expert on this specific case study in Assam. And I'm looking back at your original research question. Does polarized political identity have a role in escalation of communal conflict? It's a yes, no question. So yes, maybe it does. To what extent do we think political dialogue or political rhetoric has a role? And I remember in class, we spoke about subnational comparisons. Can you think of another case in India, for example, where we also see polarized political dialogue when we don't see communal conflict? I think you highlighted that. I'm curious, what is it? What are these missing variables outside of polarized political dialogue that might have more causal impact on communal conflict, if that makes sense?
Right.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you for the question. So there are a few cases where you've seen a lot of polarizing rhetoric being used by political parties and leaders, but it has not led to violence. That one case is in Ayodhya, in UP, where trade unions and economic partnerships between middle class business owners prevented violence because they were able to provide shelter to each other, and also because it led to loss to both parties. So even if you disliked the person, you wouldn't do anything to harm yourself. Because I'm sorry. Right. So there's also the other example of where the community itself is more self-sufficient and cohesive. Like for example in Kerala, where even if polarizing rhetoric is used, the communities are more likely to attack the political party and their leaders rather than attack each other, because unfortunately, it's because they believe in communism, and they believe that their identity as Keralites and as communists aligns them more than their identity as Hindus and Muslims. I don't completely understand it. Yeah, but it's just that they place their identity, their joint identity as communists and as Keralites above their religious identity.
Thank you. And I would just end by saying to extend this research going forward, it might be very interesting for you to maybe do some of those comparative cases to identify those variants. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you so much, Lakshmi.